Hey, beautiful seeker, welcome back to the Existential Shift. If you're new to my channel, my name is Morgane. This is a 13th element episode. Today we're going to talk about frequencies and vibrations. High frequency, low frequency, how do we transfer between them, and what does it all really mean? Frequencies and vibrations are words that are very often used nowadays in the spiritual community. Those are scientific terms that apply to spiritual notions. It's not contradictory. I always like to say that science and spirituality are different languages, to describe the same phenomena. Often what happens is science kind of chases spirituality and esoteric teachings by attempting to prove very ancient phenomena and notions. And once it does that, it gives it the stamp of approval and then also takes credit for what the ancients have discovered a long time ago. It kind of rebrands existing things in scientific terminology, which is okay because at least that's the way in these ancient wisdoms arrive to the public in a way that the public is more able to digest and accept as truth. So this applies also with frequencies and vibration and spirituality, but the reason why I'm making this video is because a lot of people who talk about frequencies and vibrations don't really seem to know what those words actually mean. And so when they use them to describe, to teach or to describe all kinds of energetic spiritual notions, because they don't understand what it means, they use it in the wrong context, they teach the wrong things. It creates confusion when it comes to what it is that it's supposed to guide us through. These frequencies and vibrations. And what does it really mean to get to higher frequencies and how to get there? Because if you don't know what a frequency is, you don't know what the work that is required in order to get to its higher manifestation, right? And if you use it in the wrong context and you don't really understand what that means, yet you think you know what that means, especially if you're a spiritual teacher out there who has an audience, that creates a lot of false guidance. And the intention is good. I'm absolutely certain most of you who are watching this right now think you know what it means, and then you might realize that you didn't. If you did, great. There are other clarifications that I will incorporate into this video that you can use in your teachings. Now, this is for teachers and students alike, seekers and masters alike. You don't know what you don't know, so give it a chance in case you learn something new. One request that I have, something that happens to me quite often, is when I will clarify something in the spiritual or energetic world, teach something, and then I will see bigger fish than me, meaning YouTubers that have way bigger following, that said something completely different a day before. Now that I publish it, suddenly say what I say as if they're the ones who discovered. Now, I didn't discover this. I'm just speaking from knowing what it is, right? I'm not claiming discovery. However, if I taught you something that you used to say something completely different, and now you're going to speak it up, consider crediting. That's just a general spiritual thing to do. Let's get into it. Let's start with what vibration means. Vibration is just what it sounds. Movement. Vibe. Okay? It's movement. Everything in our existence, under the Newtonian laws of physics and actually beyond it as well, moves. Nothing is actually stagnant. Okay? You know the earth is constantly circulating. You know that everything in your body, your cells, your molecules are in constant movement. So stagnation is perception. It's an illusion. We're always in movement. So basically, vibration is just that, movement. Now, what does frequency mean? Frequency is a beat of a cycle of how fast or how often or not often something moves, something vibes. Okay? So when my finger does this, it's a vibration, right? It's a movement. But if it takes me 1 second to do one circle, that's a frequency, 1 circle per second, aka 1 hertz. Okay, so the frequency of the movement, the frequency, how frequent is something vibing. Now, the reason I'm constantly doing a circle is because everything is really vibing in circles or spirals, but it's not as relevant for the moment. Okay, if I go to a higher frequency, we have 2 circles in a second, right? A frequency of vibration that moves 2 beats, 2 circles in 1 second. This now turns into 2 hertz, and so on and so forth. So 100 hertz will be, my finger would be able to move 100 cycles. It will vibrate on 100 cycles per second. Okay, that's where hertz comes in. Okay, it's a measure, it's a way of measuring quantity. Frequency from the word frequent. Okay, now that we have that covered, because a lot of people use the word frequency and vibration, and when they use it in a certain context, I'm like, that's not how. And I'm saying all of this with love. Please don't think that I'm trying to convince you to not teach. This is an ongoing journey of, trial and error and learning and teaching. It's okay. Okay, I love that you're here. I love that you have the intent. I love that you speak in this terminology. But let's help each other, help others by clarifying and specifying what things actually mean. And the reason why I'm so particular on this is because, and you'll understand in a second, how it affects the actual spiritual teachings and the spiritual work and the journey towards higher vibration, higher frequency of vibrations. Okay. So what I hear a lot is high frequency, vibrate on a high frequency. You are, which implies to being more spiritual, more aware, more conscientious. True. For example, Earth, the Schumann resonance, Earth's frequency, because everything moves, right? Earth frequency is 7.83 hertz. So Earth moves in 7 cycles, 7 beats, 0.83 per second. Venus, for example, moves at 221.23 hertz per second. So, which means that Venus's frequency, the planet Venus frequency, is way higher, or should I say faster, because that's the truth of it. It's not as much as it is low versus high, as it is slow versus fast. And the difference matter. You'll understand in a second, okay? So Earth is 7.83 hertz. Venus is 221.23 hertz. We as Earthlings tend to vibrate, or ideally should vibrate, with alignment with the Earth frequencies to feel in harmony in our life. Okay, when we stretch overly above the frequency of Earth, or overly faster or overly slower, it causes an inconvenience. Doesn't really matter right now. The reason I'm telling you this is because I want to clarify that Venus, for example, vibrating on a higher, faster frequency versus the Earth, doesn't mean that Venus is better than Earth. Okay? It means that Venus moves faster. Now, what I'm about to say is going to make you think like, well, that does sound like that's better and that's not better. But I will move further and then explain why it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. So, us here on Earth, we have a certain frequency of consciousness. How fast our knowledge, our consciousness, our brain waves move. How fast we think. How broad we expand, for example. So here you are going to say, well, faster, higher means we're smarter, means we're more advanced. Yes. However, that's like saying that, I'll tell you what the problem in it is. That's like saying that 100 miles per hour when you're driving is better than 10 miles per hour when you're driving. When in fact, the 100 miles per hour relies on the existence of 10 miles per hour and so on and so forth until it arrives 100. When you press the gas in your car, it starts moving faster and faster and faster and faster, from slow to fast, but you can't really skip the slow to get to the fast. If it's not possible, it's like trying to skip the building 14th floor for the sake of arriving to the 15th floor, right? We want to be higher than lower, but if you skip 1 through 14, the lower, slower frequencies, then inevitably, if they don't exist, then this becomes the first floor, right? Faster is in relation to slower. Higher is in relation to lower. So using the terminology of better/worse, higher/lower, like in reference to people's intelligence or expansion and so on, is kind of limiting and confusing and false, because that creates a situation where people don't go through the lower frequencies in order to get to the high frequencies, because no one wants to be lesser, no one wants to be low frequency, no one wants to be low vibe. Guys, you need to understand that low vibe or low frequency does not mean evil or bad. Evil is on a completely different Newtonian spectrum and ways of analyzing it. Evil can be high frequency, evil can be low frequency. Evil can move in fast consciousness, evil can move in low consciousness, and so does goodness, so does light. That's something that is very, very important for me to clarify, that when you speak in terms of low frequency versus high frequency, a lot of people teach it in ways of like, this is good, this is evil. This is aware, this is dumb. It's like saying, okay, is a kid that is learning for the first time 1 + 1 = 2, are they dumb? No, they are going through the process of learning. It's the first class in math. So it's, okay, less knowledgeable, but in relation to the kid's age and capacity, it's perfect. It's accurate. So if Earth is vibrating on a certain frequency that is lower than, for example, Venus or any other planet, it's not because it's lesser. It's because this is the stage we're at. This is where we're at on the journey of growth and expansion. And the thing that you need to understand that is that the child that is learning 1 + 1 = 2 for the first time, and the physicist who understands complex equations, they're one of the same. The child has a different type of wisdom, right? And they're learning this type of wisdom. But being on that journey is still being on that cycle, okay? If I start here, this is the point, my starting point, first class in math, low, slow frequency, okay? The first 10 miles per hour before I speed it up to 50 miles, to 70 miles, to 100, and so on. I go on the journey, I speed up, 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 and guess what happens? Everything is in a circle. Everything vibrates circularly because the universe is all in spirals and circles. I get to the starting point. The end point is the starting point. So as we go through this journey of slower frequencies versus faster, high frequencies, we're basically just going back to ourselves as we progress. Because divinity, godlyhood, is light that broke down into slower mechanisms. It's like the zero, the light, right? When we understand it as either everything or nothing, light, God, is either the fastest that there is or the lack of movement that there is. Now, it's hard to grasp in our very somewhat limited human brain. Okay, well, how can something be the fastest but also not moving at all, or the slowest? I myself can't fathom that in my movements and in my life. I think it's above us. It's like the worm that lives in 2 dimensions can't grasp 3 dimensions that we understand. A worm does not understand space. It doesn't have above and below. A worm just goes on the flat surface of a reality. When you come above it and squash it, it doesn't see it or grasp it until it's gone. It's like 1 second it's here, the next it's gone. It doesn't realize that something comes from above it. Okay, so to us, we don't understand the higher dimensions because we can't grasp it. We're not there yet. But that doesn't make us lessers. And that doesn't make what I'm saying now, that the fastest is also the slowest, not true. And I do understand why it's hard to understand. I myself having a hard time of grasping it, but hey, we're getting there. Okay? So to get to higher frequencies, faster frequencies, we have to go through the slower frequencies, right? To get to the, because things are not really circular. Things are spiral. So in order to get to a wider circle, I start here, small circle, small, bigger, bigger, like a spiral, right? And then big. It had to start with source, with that one point that is everything and nothing, the zero, and then it starts moving from slow to fast, from narrow to wide. There we go. So this relies on this. The fast relies on the slow. The high relies on the low. The major circle relies on the center. Now it's ironic because we talk about broadening and expanding, and yet as we do so, we kind of distance ourselves from source, from center, from stillness, and also the speediest. So when you're constantly on the journey to expansion, consider that you're simultaneously moving away from source, but also to another bigger aspect of source. That I myself, as I said right now, it's hard to fathom this. So we're in this boat together, okay? We are like the 3D trying to fathom 13th dimension. We can theorize it, we can talk about it, but actually sensing and grasping it, it's a bit beyond us, and that's okay. Now let's see how this applies to dimensions, because I just spoke about dimensions. So we have the worm on the 2 dimensions, a flat surface, right? We have us in 3 dimension. We have the dream space in the 4th dimension. We have the spirit in the 5th dimension. And as we raise our frequency of consciousness and movement, slowly we lose our physical existence and become spirit. Spirit is very, very high, fast, not high, fast movement. Now, let's take a break for a second. I'll cycle back to it. Let me explain why spirit is fast movement and why matter, earth, body is slow movement. So we have the equation E equals mc squared, the equation of relativity by Albert Einstein. E equals mc squared. E equals energy equals m, which means mass, matter, times c, which represents the speed of light, squared. Speed of light times, so energy equals mass times speed of light times speed of light. So when mass, matter, moves faster and faster times the speed of light times the speed of light, right? mc squared. As fast as it goes like that, it becomes energy. And simultaneously, when energy slows its molecular movement by the speed of light times the speed of light, it goes to being mass. For example, let's simplify this. You take ice, condensed water, because the molecules of the water are very, very slow and close to one another. They move very, very slowly and very tight to one another. So it gets solidified into something solid, ice. If you warm it up, and fire is very, very fast movement. Heat makes things move faster. You warm it up, it becomes liquid, right? It gets desolidified into something more fluid and broader, right? From the cube of ice, it becomes like a puddle of water. But then if you heat it up even more, add speed to it, higher frequency, faster frequency, it becomes gas. But then if you slow it down or cool it down, because cool makes things move slower, molecules go slower, that's why things shrink in the cold and expand in the heat, then it goes back to being liquid from ether, from gas, goes back to being liquid, goes back to being solid ice. Okay, apply it to everything. So when we raised our consciousness, when our consciousness is vibrates on a higher frequency, moves in a higher speed, it slowly dissolves into energy, into spirit. The body's molecules just disperse into atoms, into elementals, and we are back to being stardust, which is a spirit. Okay, so in order for us to be in those higher dimensions, our body has to move really, really fast, because high dimensions, where spirit is very high frequency. Again, correcting myself, just so you'd understand what I'm saying, because of the notion of high versus fast. Faster frequency, faster movement. So the higher the consciousness, the more we evolve, the more our consciousness expands and evolves, the less we'll need the body, and the more we become part of spirit. But the trick is, we have to go through the low, slow movement of frequency of condensed reality in order to get there. Now here's how it applies to spirituality. We can't ditch low frequencies, or ditch the world of matter, and just be high frequency and spirit in the higher dimensions without being material, or without being low vibe. You can't be high vibe without being low vibe. You don't have 2 without 1. You don't have 3 without 2, and so on and so forth. They rely on one another. Trying to get rid of your low frequencies will never get you to so-called high frequencies, because it's like you can't get to the 15th floor without going through the 1 through 14. You can't go through 100, can't arrive to 100 miles per hour without driving through the, speeding up. Okay, we're 5 miles, 10 miles, 50 miles, 90 miles. Now we're out at 100 miles per hour. You got to press the gas and go through it. Same with our spiritual growth and expansion. It also tells you that there isn't really a difference. The only difference between matter and spirit is speed. The essence is still the same thing. This existence of a so-called lower frequency is spiritual AF. Everything is spiritual. And the experience that you have here are the way to awareness, expansion of consciousness. If you try to evade it, you will never get there. You will keep dropping to the same point, to the same starting point. Your car is not going to get you to 100 miles per hour without going through the miles until there. Why it's like that? I don't know. But it is like that. And here's some fun part. Different frequencies can exist simultaneously. You can't grasp them. Maybe I have some beings around me that vibrates on a very high frequency, way faster than that I can't fathom, I can't grasp. But they're simultaneously here. It happens as a spiral. Again, it's simultaneous. It's not as we get to higher dimensions, this dimension cancels itself. It's parallel and simultaneous. So please stop telling people that they need to ditch their low frequency, that they need to not think, okay, how does it apply in reality? Don't think negative thoughts. Only think positive thoughts. I love you, but here's the thing. No, I do. I love you. I'm not being sarcastic. The human range of emotion exists for a reason. We have to go through the negative to get to the positive. A positive exists because of negative, and a negative exists because of positive. So in order to reach a feeling, a sensation of elevation and ease, we have to go through the pain of what we've went through, or what exists in us. We have to go through it in order to process it. And once you process it and go through it, then the only way out is in. Go into it, You experience it, you process it, you give it love, and then immediately that shadow, or low frequency, however you want to refer to it, because a lot of people tend to associate negative feelings with low frequencies. It's the path to positive feelings, high frequencies. They rely. Okay, if I'm sad and I tell myself that I'm not sad and force happiness, it's a facade. It's fake. It's not real, and the sadness will just grow and grow and fester because it wants to move faster and faster. But I'm not letting it. I'm suppressing it. I'm keeping it stagnant. But everything wants to keep moving. Everything wants to keep expanding. Everything starts from slow and goes to fast. If I'm not letting it, if I'm not addressing it, if I'm not acknowledging it, it's going to take over me and come out some other way. It's going to move fast outside of me in a way that is out of my control. It can manifest as a disease. But everything will express itself, whether you like it or not. So if you feel like shit, please acknowledge that you feel like shit and work with it and get through it. Tears have a biological necessity. When we cry, we release outside of the body chemicals of anger, of pain, of anxiety. When we leave it in, it festers inside. It transmutes into our cells. It makes us sick. Makes us slow. Because you're hoarding slowness. So don't tell people don't feel. Fear exists for the sake of our survival. It's a red flag that tells us something is wrong and we need to be scared. Perhaps now, when we don't need to be scared and we need to overcome it, maybe it's just a trigger that reminds us of something that we should have been scared of in the past, and then it got solidified and the body remembers. So we need to differentiate: is this legitimate fear that is warning me from going to somewhere that can be harmful to me, or is this a triggered fear from something I remember, like a post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, something that happened, the trauma remained, I remember, and now I'm scared of something that reminds me of it. Two different things. But fear in its pure form, in and of itself, is here to help you. You can't be brave without being afraid. Bravery is a result of fear. Bravery is not about not being afraid. Bravery is about being afraid and getting through this and still doing the brave and right thing. Through the fear, you become brave. But you got to acknowledge how you feel first. You got to know that you're scared in order to be brave. Or else you're just doing something, and it's not brave or anything because it doesn't scare you. If it doesn't scare you, you're not being brave, you're just doing something. You're being brave when you're scared of it and you do it anyway. Because you have to, because you need to, because it's the right thing. It's the high frequency. Sorry, I had to. I love you guys. No, I mean it. I'm trying to connect so many dots together to help, and give you. I hear so often that this world of matter is punishment or detached from spirituality, like there's separation between matter and spirit and matter and energy. No, they're the same. The only difference is speed of movement, frequency of vibration. I simultaneously exist as a material being and as an energetic being. That's why we have the different bodies, right? The physical body, the energetic body, the soul. These are all just within the spiral of the existence of your soul. These are just different avenues, different elements. So the first is the physical, then the energetic, and then the spirit. And you think to yourself, well, see, this is lower. This is why. The experiences here are just as important. That's how you get there. But here's the funny thing: when you expand, at one point you start to contract again. So it goes like this, and then like this, and this, and then like this. And you know where God is? God is in the line, right in the center. Again, it's all like, it sounds like theory and philosophy because it's so hard to fathom in our reality. But here's great examples. You got to learn 1 + 1 = 2 before you learn complicated equations. You got to learn physics before you learn quantum physics. Is one better than the other? No, it's just a stage. And there's more and more and more always. And eventually the alchemist goes back to home base, to the source, to where it began, to where it was birthed from. You live a life cycle and then you get reborn and then you're a baby again. point being, when you use terminology of frequencies and vibrations, I hope this was helpful to understand what they mean, just so you have it in your head when you talk about it or when you think about it. Also for the sake of spiritual teachings and guidance for people. If you tell people to always have happy thoughts and never negative thoughts, they will manifest a shit show of terrible hell. Why? Because we manifest from our subconscious. And every time you force yourself to feel positive when you have a negative, when you actually feel positive, when it's actual joy, it's a command from the Abraham God for the Jews. It's you have to be happy, like celebrate life, celebrate creation, be joyous, okay? But don't fake being. And if you want to actually be, go through the other emotions in order to release, to work with, and be joyous with it. So please don't tell people to stop feeling negative emotions, because what happens is they just suppress it. They push it down. It generates illness. It generates mirroring of all the fears and the anxiety that they're suppressing and not working on, because the system wants you to work on it. The system wants you to actually be happy and joyous and lighthearted. Okay? So it's not going to stop mirroring at you what you truly are. And what you truly are is inside, not what you fake to be. You got to have alignment between the inside, the heart, the mind, the words, and your actions. How you feel, how you think, what you say, and what you do. Then you manifest like the creator that you are. But if you just speak the good words and put on the fake smile, but you're hurting inside, or you just feel numb because you don't want to feel the pain, so you tell yourself you're fine and you just shun it, and you think it's gone. It's there, having a party, being like, I want out. And it manifests all kinds of events that mirror these negative emotions. And then you create negative situations. Take it out into the open with yourself. Discuss it. Feel the feels. The low frequency, be low vibe, be sad, be angry. Angry is so important. Angry is crucial for the path of the spiritual warrior. If you're not angry, you're not empathic. There is so much to be mad at, so we could fix. How can you fix something that doesn't trigger you to fix it? Oh, I'm not bleeding, no wound, good vibe. I'm harmony. I don't want to do anything disharmonious as you bleed to death, losing your life force and you're gone. So harmonious. Wow, that's so cool. What are you doing? Fake harmony is not harmony. Sometimes you gotta fight for harmony, because if something is out of alignment with harmony, if something is very deceitful, unjust, it's not aligned with harmony. And if you allow it, it just drifts further and further to the abyss of disharmony, which then inevitably pulls you down with it. You know, then they came for me and no one was left to speak for me. You gotta be angry and you gotta speak up and fight for justice. No, I'm too harmonious and too high vibe for this. I'm above it. You have no idea how low you sound. Truly low. Because you're not harmonious. You're a coward for doing that. You don't want to deal with your inner conflict. You're in denial, so you don't want to deal with outer conflict because it reminds you of your inner conflict, and you don't want to feel that. But because someone told you that you shouldn't feel that, and that someone should wake up and teach when they're beneficial, when their teachings are beneficial. It's one thing when you don't cause good, but when you cause harm. Anyway, so something drifts outside of harmony. In order to get it back in line with harmony, there has to be like a very sharp shift back. You think this enjoys it? The thing that is out of harmony and out of alignment enjoys this? It hurts. It's extreme. It feels conflicted. In order for you to get it there, it's an effort on your end, and then it creates the sentiment of disharmony, of conflict, but it's for the sake of harmony. Also, when you don't get mad at injustice, it shows lack of empathy. You can't call yourself an empath and not get upset over the pain of others. How are you an empath? Empathy is about feeling the pain of another or the joy of another. It's emotionally relating and experiencing what the other experiences, right? That's empathy. So if you're above it and you're not feeling it, you're not an empath. You're not heart-based. You're in the mind. And the mind can't go fast and expand its consciousness into higher frequency, faster frequencies, higher dimensions, faster dimensions, whatever, without the heart. The heart is going to keep you anchored right down until you take it with you. You're not going anywhere without the heart. This is the home of God. The heart has 40,000 brain cells. It's a mind in and of itself, more powerful than this polar mind. This is a polar mind. This is our polar dual world. The heart is unified. The divine feminine and the divine masculine are in the heart, in the chambers of it. If you're not feeling the pain of the world and the joy of the world, and you're not enraged by injustice. Now, when I say rage, when I say anger, I don't mean violence. I don't mean taking the law into your own hands and causing damage. I mean feel it and allow it to trigger you into beneficial action or activism. The path to joyous spirituality goes through very angry spirituality. Being numb to injustice is spiritual death. I wrote it on my Instagram a couple days ago. It's not spiritual. And it doesn't contradict also being super happy and joyous when great things are abound. But then it means that your joy is real because you're actually feeling it. Because your heart is present. And if your heart is present, it feels the good, it feels the bad. It's happy with the good things, it gets angry with the bad things. And when you're a true empath, and your consciousness is truly broad, fast, then you understand that everyone is a part of you, that when someone is in suffering, you are in suffering. You feel it. Because they are you. There's no disconnect, right? And if you don't get angry at someone else's injustice and someone else's pain, that means you don't get angry at your own injustice and your own pain. It means that you're not fighting for yourself, for your own healing, for your own justice. And you tell yourself you don't want to fight for someone else's justice as a projection, as to an excusing why you're not fighting for your own justice in your own life. To liberate yourself from your own oppression if you are oppressed. Of course you'll accept someone else being oppressed if you accept you being oppressed. If you don't even know you're being oppressed. They're fine, they're not oppressed, everything's fine because you're used to being oppressed. You have no idea that you're living in a reality that oppresses you. How can you rage at someone being gaslight when your own partner gaslights you and you don't recognize it, right? So if you don't get mad and upset over negative things that are happening, look within and be like, where am I missing in my own life things that should upset me? Where am I in denial? It can mean that you're not in spiritual consciousness, you're in denial. By not wanting to be in negative feelings, you're creating more and more pressure of negative feelings inside of you because denial just pushes it in. And then you manifest really, really terrible things. And you're like, well, why didn't my manifestation board work? Because it's bullcrap. Watch my True Secrets of Manifestation, 13th element. Watch my New Earth Prophecy, high frequency versus low frequency. 13th element that I did. I will link them here. Thank you for being here. I do love you very much, which is why I'm saying all these things. And if you're teaching these things, I'm glad that if you didn't know it, now you know it. And if I helped and you're a big fish, I have several of them that keep taking my stuff and then use it as if it's theirs, and it's like say things that they didn't say before that. It's so hurtful. Honestly, I need to find a way to. Now, the way to get over it is by correcting the injustice and being like, hey, not cool. Love you anyway. Stay magic, stay true, stay slow frequency, fast frequency, just exist with love. and connection and empathy. Know thyself and know the world by doing so.